Welcome to the Daily Vibecasting. Today, algorithms are replacing venture capitalists, DIY biohackers are rewriting DNA in their garages, and the job of simply thinking is becoming a premium skill. Let's dive in.
Yeah, I am definitely ready to tear into the timeline today.
Awesome. Well, for those of you joining us, the mission of this deep dive is to, basically cut through the absolute noise of your feed. We are pulling the signal from today's top sources so you get that analytical edge.
Right, and we're going to look past the initial hype. I mean, my goal here is to dig into the cynical side. We want to find those hidden second-order effects, right? Like, who actually loses money here? Who gets regulated?
Exactly. And we are jumping straight into the absolute bedrock of business right now, which is how we predict the future and how we fund it.
Both of which are completely breaking in real time, by the way.
Yeah, they really are. Let's start with the public markets. There's this viral, just highly contentious thread from @Fulshul. He's bluntly calling out what he terms chart crime.
Oh, the scatter plot thing. Yeah, I saw that.
What? Right. People are taking the S&P 500 forward PE ratios, plotting them against 10-year returns on these super simple 2D scatter plots, and they're using that to forecast an imminent market crash.
It is honestly a phenomenal case study in how dangerous consensus thinking gets when people just, they don't understand the underlying math.
Well, break that down for the listener, because a forward PE ratio is just what, price to earnings?
Exactly. It's just a metric. It measures what you're paying for a stock today versus what the company is, projected to earn. Wall Street uses it to guess if a market is overvalued. But what Futrell is pointing out is that analysts are treating autocorrelated time series data as if they are entirely independent events.
Wait, pause right there. Let's unpack that mechanism. Is autocorrelated data I don't know, flipping a coin where a heads magically influences the next flip?
No, not a coin, because coin flips are mathematically isolated.
Right.
The coin has no memory. Autocorrelated data is more like the weather. If it's snowing heavily in New York at 2 p.m., it is highly probable it will still be snowing at 2:05 p.m.
Right, that makes sense.
Those aren't two independent data points proving a sudden global ice age. They're just part of the exact same continuous weather system. And the stock market works exactly the same way.
So valuations drag over time.
Exactly. When you plot these daily points on a 2D scatter plot without accounting for that timeline, you artificially inflate the correlation. You completely hide the massive underlying variance.
So you're saying the doommongers are basically taking thousands of snowy 5-minute intervals, throwing them on a chart, and just declaring winter will last forever.
That is the perfect way to visualize it. I mean, if you look at the actual math, at the current 19.8x PE ratio, historical 5-year returns have swung wildly, from minus 0.6% all the way to positive 14.5%.
Now, that is a huge spread.
The variance is absolutely massive. You simply cannot forecast market doom based purely on valuation in a 2D vacuum. It's a dynamic system, not a static geometry problem.
Let's follow that thread then, because if public market forecasting is fundamentally flawed when we rely on simplistic models, what about private capital?
Oh, this is where it gets crazy.
Right. If human analysts can't reliably predict public markets, how are they deciding who gets funded in the private sector? Which brings me to this massive revelation posted by @Chamath.
The capital as a service experiment.
Yes, Kanai S. He pulled back the curtain on the secret experiment he ran in the mid-2010s. He literally automated venture capital.
The mechanism of this is what's truly wild to me.
It is. Founders just submitted their raw data. We are talking Stripe revenue dashboards, QuickBooks files, GitHub commit frequency.
And an algorithm just ran that data against strict quantitative rules.
Exactly. Totally bypassing the human gut feel or the fancy Ivy League networking dinners. It just spit out an investment decision.
And we have to look at the second order effect of the results here. Because it worked.
It really did.
They funded over 50 companies and returned more than a 2x DPI.
For those listening, DPI means distributed to paid-in capital. So they literally doubled the cash return to their investors.
With internal rates of return in the mid-teens.
Yeah.
But the real story is why the experiment actually stopped.
Right.
The bottleneck wasn't the algorithm's ability to pick winners. According to Chamath, the only hurdle was the lawyers.
The legal friction, setting up the corporate entities, global investment blockers, the endless paperwork.
Correct. But hold on, think about the timeline we're living in right now. The mid-2010s did not have the tools we have today.
Oh, you mean the AI agents?
Yes. We are entering an era where AI agents are custom built to act as automated paralegals. They can process and execute those exact complex legal tasks in seconds.
Man, if an AI agent clears that operational friction, that doesn't just make capital as a service a fun experiment again. It entirely hollows out the traditional VC firm.
Completely. Who loses their jobs here? It's the entire class of Wall Street junior analysts whose primary value is just like spreadsheet jockeying.
Right, and networking-based due diligence, but does that democratize it?
It democratizes access for a founder in the middle of nowhere, sure. But it concentrates the ultimate decision-making power into rigid algorithmic code.
Which leads to a very precarious situation when you look at the macro funding landscape for science. This is a critical pivot.
Yeah, the budget cuts.
Exactly. We have to look at the macro numbers. At Eilikin posted today regarding proposed FY 2027 budget cuts to U.S. science agencies. Now, quick caveat for you listening. We are reporting on this strictly from an impartial market perspective. We are not taking political sides on the budget itself.
Right, just looking at the mechanics.
Exactly. But the proposed numbers are staggering. A 50% cut to the National Science Foundation, a 23% cut to NASA, and a 12 to 13% cut to the NIH.
If you strip away the politics, foundational scientific research, the kind that takes 3 decades to mature and doesn't immediately turn a profit, has historically been bankrolled by federal funding.
Right, like the mRNA tech for vaccines. That's sat in federally funded labs for decades.
Decades.
Yeah.
So if federal funding for deep fundamental science evaporates, who fills that void?
It defaults to the private sector.
And not just the private sector, but the exact algorithmic, data-driven private capital we just talked about.
Oh, wow. So algorithmic capital becomes the dictator of human innovation.
Exactly. And an algorithm optimizing strictly for a 2x return in a 10-year fund is not going to fund a 20-year experiment in exploratory biology. It starves foundational research.
Which means the actual innovation is going to be pushed out of massive institutional labs and into the extreme edges. And we are seeing that happen right now in frontier biology.
The Polymarket Post.
Yes, let's look at this breaking win reported by @Polymarket. An experimental gene therapy air injection just cured 10 out of 10 patients of congenital deafness in a clinical trial.
10 out of 10. That is wild.
Incredible, right? We are talking about patients with a specific OTOF gene mutation. Their hearing threshold is dropped from 106 decibels, which is basically the volume of a roaring chainsaw, down to 52 decibels.
Which is like a quiet conversation or a fridge hunting.
Yeah.
We have to emphasize the mechanism of why this matters. This is not a cochlear implant.
Right.
It's not a hardware workaround or a symptom bandage. It is a root genetic fix. They are using an adeno-associated virus vector to deliver the therapy directly into the inner ear.
Break down that virus vector part for the listener. Because, I mean, how does a virus cure deafness?
Well, think of the virus vector like a microscopic FedEx delivery truck. Viruses naturally evolved to be incredibly good at breaking into human cells.
Right, that's their whole job.
Exactly. So scientists take these viruses, completely empty out the harmful infectious payload, and pack the empty truck with the corrected healthy OTOF gene.
And they just inject it.
They inject it into the ear, the virus breaks into the cells, and literally rewrites the biological code to restore hearing. It is profound.
It really is.
But the immediate second-order question is scaling. How does a highly customized, complex viral vector therapy scale to the global population? The traditional medical establishment is a massive bottleneck.
Well, the market is already trying to route around that bottleneck by bypassing the medical establishment entirely. @Brian_Armstrong posted today about the severe underinvestment in frontier biology.
Yeah, he was talking about cheap DNA synthesis.
Exactly. And in the replies, a user pointed straight to biohacker Josie Zahner. She is currently selling DIY CRISPR kits online, like literally mailing out kits that let everyday people edit genes and frogs and bacteria on their kitchen tables.
And this is where the democratization narrative gets incredibly dangerous, in my opinion.
You think so?
Absolutely. It sounds empowering on a deep dive show to say, anyone can be a scientist.
Yeah.
But consider the bio-risks of unregulated lab work happening next to your dishwasher.
Okay, fair point.
When a software developer writes bad code, the app crashes. When a biohacker makes a mistake with CRISPR, we're talking off-target genetic mutations, accidental environmental releases of pathogens. Biological bugs can fundamentally alter an ecosystem.
Let me push back on that a little bit. Are we just pearl clutching here? I mean, people have been brewing beer and crossbreeding plants in their backyards for centuries. Isn't this just citizen science?
Brewing yeast won't accidentally engineer a hyper-resistant strain of E. coli. The barrier to entry from manipulating the building blocks of life is dropping to the price of a PlayStation. We do not have the regulatory frameworks for garage-level gene editing.
Which creates an unbelievable, almost comedic irony about human nature today. We are playing God with CRISPR in the garage, but we are completely blind to the basic environments we inhabit. I have to
Yeah.
bring up this post from @Brian_Johnson.
Oh my God, the turf realization. It is almost poetic.
It really is. Brian Johnson is arguably the world's most famous biohacker. The guy spends millions annually rigorously optimizing every metric of his body to conquer aging.
Testing his blood every day.
Right, and he just realized that the artificial turf he installed in his own backyard is actively leaching toxic PFAS forever chemicals and heavy metals into his environment.
And as the community notes pointed out, this isn't even novel information. Local media in New York were flagging crumb rubber in artificial turf for potential cancer clusters a decade ago, back in 2015.
Wow.
It perfectly encapsulates the modern condition.
Yeah.
We have the tech to map the human genome and cure congenital deafness, but we are inadvertently poisoning our endocrine systems with ground-up tires just because we don't want to mow the grass.
We can see the microscopic code of life, but we can't see the heavy metals in our own backyard. And speaking of code, that exact same chaotic democratization happening in biology is actively conquering the software world right now.
Oh, the AI deployment era. The barrier to entry is just vanishing.
Totally vanishing.
God.
Scott Bleiser posted that he built 2 fully operational applications in 20 minutes using Replit and the X API.
20 minutes.
20 minutes. One app was mapping global storms, the other monitoring geopolitical news. And the hard data supports this speed. At GDB, Greg Brockman shared metrics showing that startups utilizing AI are seeing a 1.9x revenue boost while requiring 39% less capital.
I look at that data, and my skepticism immediately flares up regarding enterprise sustainability.
Really? Why?
Well, look at the post from at Roundtable Space. They were promoting this open source everything Claude Code setup. It boasts 27 distinct AI agents, 64 different skills, over 1,200 automated security tests, all supposedly talking to each other to build software.
I mean, on paper, that sounds incredibly efficient. A whole company in a box.
On paper, sure. In reality, it sounds like an absolute Rube Goldberg machine. Is this actual efficiency, or are we just piling abstractions on top of abstractions?
What happens when it breaks?
Exactly. When Agent A hallucinates a variable, passes it to Agent B, who misinterprets it and passes it to the testing agent, the debugging process doesn't require a programmer, it requires an archaeologist.
That's a great way to put it.
We're risking creating systems that demand more maintenance overhead just to keep the agents aligned than human coders ever did.
That is a fair critique of those bloated multi-agent swarms. But here is the aha moment for you listening, and this completely changes the paradigm. At Akash Gupta and at uchenj_UW did an incredible deep dive into Andrei Karpathy's new distribution model.
The LLM Wiki project.
Yes, Karpathy didn't share a GitHub repository. He didn't share thousands of lines of Python dependencies. He shared a single one-page markdown idea file.
Explain the mechanism of how that actually compiles for the user, because this is the pivot right here.
Okay, so a markdown file is literally just plain text. It's a document explaining the architecture and the goal of the software. That's it.
Right.
When a user downloads that text file, their own personal AI agent reads the instructions, gathers the documents, and custom writes the entire software specifically for that user's local machine. The user never touches the code.
If you're listening to this and your entire career relies on executing other people's ideas, like writing boilerplate code, this is a massive warning siren.
A huge siren.
We are shifting from open source to open intent. Think about it like baking a cake. In the past, software was a strict recipe. You had to tell the computer exactly how many grams of flour, what temperature, how long to bake it. If one variable was off, it crashed.
The dreaded syntax error?
Exactly. But with a markdown idea file, Karpathy is just handing the AI a photograph of a finished chocolate cake. The AI acts as the master sous chef. It figures out the ingredients, writes the Python lines, handles the managers, and bakes it perfectly in the background.
So execution is now a completely commoditized utility. Jack Dorsey weighed in on this, actually. He called Markdown's 20-year dominance a legendary run.
It really is.
It proves that simple, elegant, stateless text will outlive bloated software. The idea is now the only bottleneck. The AI handles the ingest, the query, and the linting.
And we should quickly define linting for the audience. It's essentially an automated, hyper-aggressive spell check for code logic and factual consistency.
Well, this brings up the @JeffDean post.
Yes. Perfect example. Jeff Dean posted a screenshot showing a major, embarrassing headline error from the New York Times. The Times literally referred to NATO as the North American Treaty Organization instead of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization.
A basic foundational factual error at one of the most elite journalistic institutions on the planet.
The irony is blinding. Human beings at elite institutions are hallucinating basic historical facts, while AI agents are running flawless, self-healing diagnostic checks on personal code bases in the background continuously.
It really is wild.
It fundamentally begs the question, as execution, funding, and fact-checking are outsourced to algorithms, what is the actual role of the human brain moving forward?
Which brings us perfectly to our final segment today, scarcity mechanics and saving the human machine. Because if the friction of doing the work is entirely removed, something inside us basically breaks.
Yeah, we atrophy.
Exactly. There's a profound warning today from At the Denko. He argues that you absolutely must write without AI. No templates, no ChatGPT prompts. Just you, a blank page, and the sheer frustration of forming a coherent idea.
And he cites the neuroscience to back it up, too. The manual, physical act of writing activates interconnected brain regions responsible for memory, sensory processing, and motor control.
It's an actual workout for the brain.
Right. Passive typing, or worse, just prompting an LLM to write for you, completely bypasses those neural pathways.
So friction isn't a bug in the human operating system, it's the feature.
Exactly. This is the critical second-order effect of ultimate convenience. Cognitive atrophy.
Right.
When you stare at a blank page, that frustration you feel isn't a lack of ideas, it is the neurological friction of your brain physically building new biological pathways.
Well, that's fascinating.
Writing a complex essay using an AI is like taking a helicopter to the summit of Mount Everest and claiming you climbed it.
Right, you get the photo at the top.
Yes, you get the view. You get the high-status output to post online. But your muscles haven't changed at all. Over time, sitting in that cognitive zero gravity, you completely lose the ability to climb. If you outsource the friction of thinking, you outsource the learning.
That is a terrifying and perfect metaphor, and we see this exact same desire to aggressively manage friction in our physical lives too, like how we manage our presence in a hyper-connected world. At Signal had a massive viral post today analyzing the Irish exit.
Oh, the social strategy of leaving a party without saying goodbye to anyone.
Right, but the specific advice in the post is to leave social gatherings early, specifically while the energy is still high.
Okay, why?
The goal is to become the mysterious person who was just here, rather than the person who lingered until the lights came on and the conversation got stale. It's entirely about preserving your social status.
Ah, so it's the application of real-world scarcity mechanics and tempo management. In a digital world of infinite availability where everyone is constantly accessible, physical absence becomes a luxury good. You're curating your physical presence the exact same way you would curate a corporate brand.
You leave at the peak.
You leave at the peak to lock in a perfect memory via recency bias.
But I'm going to push back hard on this, and thankfully a lot of the replies in the thread did too. By executing the Irish exit just to preserve this perfect, high-energy memory, aren't you entirely missing the point of human connection?
Well, you miss the messiness.
Right. The deep, messy, authentic magic of a gathering almost never happens at 9 p.m. at the peak of the party. It happens at 2 a.m. when the crowd thins out, people are exhausted, the performative guards drop, and the actual vulnerable truth comes out.
That is the ultimate trade-off of the modern era, though.
Yeah.
You are actively sacrificing deep, messy authenticity for curated, high-status perfection.
It really is.
It's the exact same dynamic as the AI essay. You use the Irish exit to get the perfectly polished social outcome without any of the awkward friction, but you completely miss the messy magic of discovering who your friends actually are.
Wow. Okay, that is the perfect synthesis of the timeline today. From algorithmic capital starving fundamental science to open intent software commoditizing execution, all the way down to how we curate our own humanity. Based on all of this, what is your prediction for tomorrow? What actually happens next?
Well, if you track the trajectory of Chamath's automated capital and combine it with the flawless execution of Karpathy's open intent markdown files, I predict we are less than 12 months away from a major milestone.
12 months.
Less than a year. A startup will be conceptually founded, immediately funded by an algorithmic VC based purely on market data, and operated entirely by a swarm of AI agents.
Ah,
All are triggered by a single markdown file.
unbelievable.
And it will reach profitability requiring absolutely zero human employees.
The ultimate autonomous entity. Which leaves us with a final provocative thought for you to chew on as you go about your day. If algorithms allocate all the capital, If AI agents write and deploy the code flawlessly, and if garage gene therapies eventually extend our lifespans to give us more time on this earth, what is the one uniquely human, high-friction skill you are actively cultivating today that an agent cannot replicate?
That is genuinely the only question that matters right now.
Think on that. Thanks for joining the Daily Vibecasting. Stay sharp, and we'll see you tomorrow.